The Super Nintendo Entertainment System turns 30 years old today, at least in North America, where it was released on August 23, 1991. So, as the SNES reaches its 3-decade milestone, I decided to come up with definitive, data-driven, opinion-free, crowdsourced rankings of which games are the most popular and beloved among modern players, the games people are actually still playing and enjoying decades later. This video is basically a condensed and more visual reading of a big feature I just wrote for Uproxx, so if you'd like more detail or would just rather read instead of listening to me, the link to the written story is in the description. To make this list, first I browsed the SNES games listed on Emu Paradise, Groovy, IGDB, and How Long to Beat, all of which feature an average user rating for just about every SNES game ever released and indicate how many users rated the game. For all the North American releases that had at least 100 total ratings across all sites, I entered them into a spreadsheet. For each game, I added the number of ratings from all sites, what those ratings were, and calculated an average rating. Then, I used a mathematical formula based on ones from people who know more about numbers than I do, to come up with a final score. This final score takes into account both how many ratings the games have and what its ratings are. In total, 217,464 user ratings for 221 games were collected for this list. To reiterate, these rankings have nothing to do with my opinions. They would look a lot different if they did. Kirby's Dream Course and Super Bases Loaded, which would both be somewhere in at least the top 20 or so of my personal rankings, didn't even make this list. Rather, these rankings intend to accurately represent how appreciated these games are now based on the thoughts of over 200,000 gamers, not just one or a few. Now that we've established the method to create the list, let's get into it, starting with 100 and working through the ranks before getting into more detail with the top 10 games. 10. Super Mario World 2, Yoshi's Island. Yoshi's Island was one of the best looking SNES games when it came out in 1995, and it is still so today thanks to its casual, hand-drawn art style that has aged better than the crayon scribblings of my youth. Aside from that though, the gameplay is really unlike many other games that were out during the NES era or are available now, save for the Yoshi games that followed it, like the excellent Yoshi's Woolly World. The egg mechanic is all its own, and Baby Mario basically serving as a hybrid health meter / death countdown / escort mission hasn't to my knowledge been done since, or at least not as well as it is here. Meanwhile, the game's level designs are engaging and intuitive, the world and those who inhabit it are vibrant and beautiful, and that final Bowser fight was one of the most intimidating and epic moments of my childhood, and it's honestly still a thrilling nail-biter. 9. Top Gear 2. Admittedly, this one was, to me, a shocking entry on this list, especially this high up. It's the only one in the top 40 or so that I had never heard of. Either way, the game today has a fairly large fan base who feel passionately about it. Actually, exploring the game, it makes sense that that's the case. Based on my admittedly limited knowledge of the swath of SNES racing games, Top Gear 2 has to be one of the most intricate. Even just when first booting up the game, players can choose whether they want an automatic or manual transmission, or miles or kilometers per hour for the speed display. There are 5 control schemes available to pick and even different engines from which you can choose. As far as SNES driving experiences, it appears this is about as deep as they get. A thinking man's answer to the more cartoony Super Mario Kart. 8. Super Metroid. Remember this summer when the fan community collectively lost its shit over the announcement of Metroid Dread, the first new 2D Metroid game in quite a while? A big reason for that is the legacy and expected level of quality that Super Metroid helped establish. Perhaps more than any game on this list, this one was critical in the creation of a genre that's still prevalent today. Heck, the genre is partially named after the game, Metroidvania. This game is all about exploration, and it offers quite the world to peruse. Mix that with a fun-to-control protagonist in Samus, a gorgeous art style that still looks surprisingly modern, and other elements not mentioned here, and you have a game that's, and this isn't hyperbole, genuinely timeless. 7. The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. Adventure of Link is a definite outlier in the Zelda series, as it notably boasts side-scrolling platforming gameplay, which isn't all too common in Hyrule. Nintendo made a return to the top-down RPG format though, with its follow-up, this game, and what a return it was. Any game that introduces an item as iconic as the Master Sword is a non-debatable winner. The game is one of the best-selling in the SNES library, and thusly its legacy has been well preserved over the years, with its Game Boy Advance port, current presence on Nintendo Switch Online, and various tributes and honors prior and in between. Based on the elements of the game that live on today, and just how good the game is, Link to the Past could be considered the defining entry in this storied franchise. 6. Donkey Kong Country. In 1994, Donkey Kong Country looked stunning, and honestly, it's still impressive today. That's thanks to the game's sprites and visual assets that were made to look like 3D models, which made the game appear as futuristic as any console game at the time. Good graphics are great, but if the gameplay isn't there, then who cares? Donkey Kong Country is of course a stellar platforming experience that, like its visuals, holds up in 2021. Aside from the game's inherent value, it's also the seed for other phenomenal side-scrolling Donkey Kong games, like the SNES Donkey Kong Country sequels and the more recent Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. 5. Super Mario AllStars. Just because the NES came to an end and was followed by an advanced new console, that didn't mean fans were totally over the original Mario adventures. Those NES games were still fun and worthwhile, so Nintendo kept them alive with Super Mario AllStars, a compilation that went on to become the SNES's #2 best-selling game. If you know the original Super Mario Bros. Games, there's not much need to explain the appeal of this All-Stars collection. This title isn't entirely a rehash though, as it features Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels, which previously wasn't released in North America because Nintendo thought it would be too challenging for US players and therefore not a welcoming direct sequel to the original SMB. 4. Mega Man X. Mega Man was one of the most powerful franchises on the NES, thanks to the 6 games that were released on the platform. When it came time for Mega Man to establish itself on the SNES though, it did so with a left turn, Mega Man X. The game was a departure for the franchise, but one that paid off big time. Aside from key plot changes, the game has a new protagonist and futuristic setting. The game offered players more mobility thanks to X's ability to scale and jump off walls. That said, the game didn't try to fix what wasn't broken. The new elements keep it interesting, but at the core of Mega Man X is the classic Mega Man gameplay that made it a hit. 3. Chrono Trigger. Chrono Trigger was primed for success even before it was released. It was helmed by a 3-person team consisting of Hironobu Sakaguchi, creator of the Final Fantasy series, Yuji Horii, creator of the Dragon Quest series, and Akira Toriyama, Dragon Quest's character designer and the author of the Dragon Ball manga series. Yeah, that's a lot of game-making firepower. Indeed, the game fared well upon release and has resonated consistently over the years since. The 08 port for the DS is one of the platform's most highly rated games, and fans are excited to hear music from the series played during this year's opening ceremony at the Olympics. Chrono Trigger may not have the name recognition of Mario or Zelda among casual gamers, but it is nonetheless an essential SNES experience that continues to excite players a quarter of a century later. 2. Earthbound. If, a year after its release, you told SNES fans that Earthbound would become one of the platform's most beloved games, you'd have raised a lot of eyebrows. While players today know that the game is a favorite, it actually wasn't a hit in the US when it was first released. It sold poorly, but as the years went on, a fervent legion of fans helped the game earn its rightful acclaim, and now it routinely appears near the top of lists like this one. The game stands out because it's not like most other RPGs of its era. It's comedic in tone and based on normal American life, meaning it's not so steeped in RPG tropes like dragons and spells and whatnot. It's a unique and refreshing entry in the SNES library, and it's no wonder why it is so beloved today, despite being unjustly undervalued in its time. 1. Super Mario World. I'm far from the first person to toot SMW's horn. It's regarded as one of the greatest games ever and is far and away the best-selling title on the SNES. It sold over 20 million copies, and that's not even counting the 5.7 million copies the Game Boy Advance port moved. To put that into perspective, the next best-selling SNES game, Super Mario AllStars, sold about 10.5 million units. SMW spawned an animated TV show and a manga series. It's a major part of the foundation for Super Mario Maker 2, one of the most popular Switch games. It's one of the most active games in the world of speedrunning. There's an active community of fans who warp the game into their own original playable Mario adventures. Those things wouldn't be possible if there wasn't a fantastic game behind the hype, and SMW's gameplay is still so tight and fun today. There's a reason virtually every new platformer now is modeled at least in part after SMW and its Mario predecessors on the NES. So many SNES games have aged poorly, but Mario and his world remain super. And that's that. Feel free to give this video a like and leave a comment. And if you haven't already subscribed, I'd really appreciate it if you did. Anyway, that's all for me. Thanks for being here. Take care.